Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Not because this is just another story on the internet, but because here we talk about the kinds of emotions people hide behind polite smiles and quiet routines. Stories that feel ordinary at first, until they slowly reveal something deeper. Now listen carefully. There are moments in life that seem completely harmless while they are happening. Moments so small, so quiet, that you barely notice them at all. But later, when everything falls apart, you realize those tiny moments were the beginning of everything. Not the arguments. Not the mistakes. Not the confessions. Just the silence before them. And this story began with silence. The house never used to feel this empty. Every morning followed the same pattern. The sound of dishes in the kitchen. The soft ticking of the clock hanging near the dining room. The faint vibration of Kareem's phone buzzing endlessly with work notifications before sunrise had even fully arrived. Everything in the house moved according to routine, precise and predictable, like a machine repeating the same motions every day. At first, I used to find comfort in that routine. There was safety in knowing what tomorrow would look like. But over the years, something changed. The routine remained, yet the warmth disappeared from it. Conversations became shorter. Smiles became polite instead of genuine. Even dinners together started feeling more like obligations than moments shared between two people who once loved each other deeply. Kareem never noticed the difference. Or maybe he did and simply chose not to look too closely at it. He was a man built around responsibility. Work came first. Deadlines came first. Providing came first. And to be fair, he was good at all of it. He made sure bills were paid. He made sure the house was stable. He made sure life looked perfect from the outside. But emotional distance is strange. It does not arrive dramatically. It arrives quietly, through missed conversations, distracted answers, and long evenings where two people sit in the same room but feel completely alone. That loneliness had become part of my daily life. I stopped expecting deep conversations. I stopped waiting for affection. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that this was simply what marriage became after enough years passed. Stable. Quiet. Predictable. Empty. The morning everything began changing looked completely ordinary. Sunlight slipped weakly through the curtains, painting pale lines across the bedroom walls. Dust drifted lazily through the air. Outside, distant traffic hummed softly like background noise in a life no one was fully paying attention to anymore. Kareem had already left for work early as usual. I stood alone in the kitchen holding a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Sometimes I would forget to drink it because my thoughts wandered too far. That morning was no different. I remember staring blankly out the window when I heard the front door open unexpectedly. Footsteps entered the house. Slow. Hesitant. For a moment I thought Kareem had forgotten something. But then I looked up and saw Ethan standing there. Kareem's son from his first marriage. He looked exhausted. Not physically exhausted, but emotionally drained in the way people look after life quietly breaks them apart piece by piece. His shoulders were tense. His eyes carried the heaviness of someone who had not slept properly in weeks. I had met him many times before, of course, but only during holidays, short visits, or family gatherings where conversations remained surface level and careful. But now he was here with a suitcase beside him and silence wrapped around him like armor. "You're back early," I said softly, unsure what else to say. He forced a faint smile. "Yeah, I guess I am." That was the first thing I noticed about Ethan. He spoke carefully, as if every sentence had to pass through exhaustion before reaching the surface. Later that evening, Kareem explained everything casually while scrolling through emails on his phone. "The breakup hit him harder than expected," he said. "He just needs a place to stay for a while until things settle down." A place to stay for a while. He said it so simply. Like it was temporary. Like nothing important would come from it. I nodded quietly and said nothing more. But from the very beginning, the atmosphere inside the house changed. Not loudly. Not obviously. Quietly. Ethan rarely stayed in common areas for long. Most of the time he kept to himself upstairs. Sometimes I would hear him moving through the hallway late at night when he thought everyone else was asleep. Other times I would find him sitting alone outside in the backyard staring into nothing for long periods of time. There was sadness around him, but it was controlled sadness. The kind people carry silently because they no longer have the energy to explain it. And strangely, I understood that feeling more than I wanted to admit. The first few days remained polite and distant. Brief greetings in the mornings. Small conversations at dinner. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing unusual. In fact, both of us seemed careful not to create too much familiarity. Maybe because we both understood boundaries too well. Or maybe because some part of us already sensed how dangerous emotional loneliness can become when two people recognize it in each other. One rainy afternoon, the electricity went out across the neighborhood. The house became unusually quiet without the constant noise of electronics humming in the background. Kareem was still at work, delayed because of meetings in another part of the city. I was sitting in the living room reading half-heartedly when Ethan walked downstairs holding a flashlight. "Looks like the storm killed everything," he said. I laughed softly. At least the silence feels honest for once. The words slipped out before I could stop them. For a moment he looked at me differently. Not disrespectfully. Not suspiciously. Just attentively. As though he heard something hidden underneath the sentence. "You say things like someone who's tired," he said quietly. That caught me off guard. No one had said something that honest to me in a very long time. I looked away quickly. Everyone gets tired. Not everyone sounds lonely when they say it. The room fell silent after that. Outside, rain tapped steadily against the windows. Inside, the darkness created a strange sense of closeness that made me uncomfortable for reasons I could not explain. I stood up almost immediately. I should probably light some candles. But even after walking away, his words stayed with me. Not everyone sounds lonely when they say it. That night, I could not sleep properly. Because the terrifying thing about loneliness is not the emptiness itself. It is the moment someone finally notices it. After that evening, I became more aware of Ethan's presence in the house. The sound of his footsteps. The quiet way he entered rooms. The exhaustion hidden behind his expressions. And worse, I became aware of my own reactions to those things. I hated myself for noticing. So I tried harder to create distance. I kept conversations shorter. I avoided being alone with him whenever possible. I reminded myself constantly that this was temporary and harmless. But emotions rarely disappear simply because you tell them to. A week later, Kareem announced we had to attend another corporate dinner event. I almost refused immediately. I was tired of pretending to be happy beside a man who barely looked at me anymore, unless discussing schedules or responsibilities. But arguing felt pointless. So that evening, I stood in the bedroom staring at dresses scattered across the bed. None of them felt right. Some looked too formal. Others felt too plain. But the real problem had nothing to do with the clothes themselves. The truth was far more uncomfortable. I no longer recognized the woman trying them on. At some point over the years, I had stopped feeling visible. Not just to Kareem, but to myself. I had become someone functional instead of someone alive. I was so lost in those thoughts that I did not hear the knock at the door. The bedroom door opened slightly, then froze. Ethan stood there holding a small package in one hand. His expression changed immediately the moment he realized I was changing clothes. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, stepping back. "I thought nobody was in here." "It's fine," I answered too fast. But neither of us moved for one strange second too long. Not because anything happened. Nothing did. And yet something shifted invisibly in the atmosphere between us. He looked away first. A delivery came for Kareem. "I'll leave it downstairs." Then he disappeared into the hallway and closed the door behind him. Silence returned instantly. But my heartbeat refused to calm down. I stood motionless for several seconds staring at the closed door. Confused by the intensity of an emotion, I did not want to examine too closely. Because deep down, I already understood something dangerous. Some moments matter not because of actions, but because of awareness. That night during the event, Kareem barely spoke to me except when introducing me to business partners. The entire evening felt performative, artificial, emotionally hollow. And for the first time in years, I caught myself wondering something I had spent a long time avoiding. When exactly had this marriage stopped feeling alive? The question followed me home. Days passed, then weeks. And slowly, The emotional distance inside the house began changing shape. Not openly. Never openly. But through little things. Small conversations in the kitchen late at night. Shared silences that somehow felt easier than conversations with anyone else. Moments where eye contact lasted slightly longer than it should have before both of us looked away. Neither of us acknowledged it. That was the unspoken rule. As long as nothing was said aloud, everything could still pretend to remain normal. But silence can only hide emotions for so long before they begin leaking through cracks in ordinary moments. One evening, I found Ethan sitting alone outside again. The backyard lights cast soft shadows across his face while cold wind moved through the trees. "You sit out here a lot," I said quietly. He shrugged faintly. "It's easier to think when everything's quiet." I leaned against the doorway without stepping fully outside. "And does the thinking help?" A small smile appeared on his face for the first time since he arrived. Not a happy smile. Just an honest one. Usually it just makes things louder in my head. I understood that answer immediately. Too immediately. For a while neither of us spoke. Then suddenly he asked, "Are you happy?" The question hit harder than it should have. I should have answered quickly. Normal people would have. But instead, silence stretched between us again. And in that silence, both of us already knew the answer. That was the moment fear truly began. Because loneliness is dangerous enough on its own. But being understood by the wrong person at the wrong time, that changes everything.